Is it enough that we know swimming? Is that enough?
So as the benchmarking study highlighted, majority of us, or almost half of us, do not know how to swim. And the interesting thing about this survey was that it was self-attested. So people were estimating their own swimming ability. And what we know is generally people overestimate their swimming ability. So we actually believe that there are more than 50% of people who cannot swim adequately in Bahrain. And as you mentioned, Raji, as an island nation, it is essential that everyone has those basic survival skills at the very least to keep themselves safe in water. Now, water safety, which is what we as an organization look after, it actually involves many different aspects. Swimming is a primary one. It's the one sport that can also save your life. So we would love everyone to know how to swim, but also making sure that they're swimming in safe environments, that our beaches are as safe as they can be, pools are as safe as they can also be, and that we're doing everything that we can to give people the opportunity to learn to swim and to enjoy the water. As you mentioned, we're on a beautiful island, that they can enjoy that water as safely as possible.
On a recap, like how serious are the concerns of drowning in Bahrain?
Every year we see on average about 16 to 20 deaths from drowning, which may seem like a relatively low number, but from our perspective, one drowning is too many drownings. And the World Health Organization actually identifies drowning as being an almost entirely preventable cause of death. And it is a big issue worldwide. Here locally in Bahrain, there's much more that we can do to make sure we don't have any drownings occurring here. So it is a serious concern. We work alongside government, the industry, and our community to try and ensure that everyone is as safe as they possibly can be in and around the water.
From your understanding or assessment, the incidents of drowning in Bahrain, how do you assess them? Like, were they preventable, or there are certain things which is out of our hand. Like, how do you assess, if you are to give me a percentage, like how much we could have avoided?
So around 70% of the drownings that occur in Bahrain happen in open water. And there's several factors which we've identified as contributing towards those types of incidents. But it's very difficult to know exactly what happens unless a thorough investigation is done following the incident to try and firstly understand what happened, but then to learn lessons from that and see how we can try and prevent that from happening in the future, which means that no drowning death is in vain, because we're learning from incidents that do occur to make sure that they don't happen again in the future. There's several factors which contribute towards it, and I was going to touch on some of these regarding our beaches. Now, if you look at the beaches in Bahrain, most people would assess them as being safe beaches, because if you compare us to other parts of the world where we have high waves, maybe even sharks in the water, rip currents and rip tides, these beaches here in Bahrain look relatively safe. But what a lot of people don't realize is that all of our beaches, or the majority, are deep shelving beaches, which means that for about 1 kilometer, you can walk out into the sea and it will be no deeper than your knee, or maybe your waist if you're a smaller person. But once you get out to about 1 kilometer, it drops off very, very suddenly. And this is called a deep shelving beach. So whereas if someone was unable to swim and they were at a beach in Australia, for example, they probably wouldn't enter the water because of the high waves and the apparent risk that they can see. What we find often happens here is that people who don't know how to swim wander into the water because it's very calm. They go out too far, they fall off these ledges, and then because they're unable to swim, they can't get back into inland and obviously back to safety. So it's very, very sad. And, considering how safe our beaches are, as I said, 70% of our drownings happen at these locations, which clearly identifies that there is still a risk at our beaches.
So how do we keep a track of these things? Like, how can, when we analyze the drownings, what does your experience say from that?
From one respect, we actually gather information about drownings from a variety of sources. So, for example, if it happened in a hotel, which fortunately we haven't had any in quite some time, we would speak to the hotel to understand what happened. Sometimes there is CCTV footage, which we can review, which will give some indication. Speaking to witnesses, so people who were there as well, also gives us an idea. And as you rightly mentioned, often drownings in Bahrain are not necessarily recorded as drownings. So we actually estimate the figures to be much higher, and many more people who are seriously injured or their life is significantly impacted because of drowning, even if it's not fatal and they do survive, they will have some issues related to that incident for the rest of their life. For example, if your brain is starved of oxygen, there will be some level of brain damage that will occur. So it's really important that we do analyze, and there is more to be done, in all honesty, in terms of how we analyze and how we investigate any drowning incident, because like I say, the best way of learning lessons sometimes is to look at how something has occurred, because it might be something that we couldn't anticipate or we didn't see was going to happen until it does. And then once it does, there's opportunities for us to learn lessons from that and make sure that we prevent that happening again in the future.
But what about the private pools? Like, what is the situation there?
So private pools are an interesting regional issue. Now, in lots of parts of the world, most places will have leisure centers or public pools where people can access water. In this region of the world, what we see is a high prevalence of private pools. And these are pools that families can hire on their own. No one else will be around. They have complete access to a private pool space for them and their family, which is fantastic. But the issue is that those environments are often not very safe. And actually, when we look at pool drownings, the majority of those drownings happen in these types of pools. Typically, they are rented from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And often people maybe lose focus, and then drowning incidents can occur, generally, sadly, with young children or teenagers. And there's several different factors that associate with both of those two age groups that can lead to this. So when we look at hiring private pools, and whenever we look at water and enjoying the water in general, we don't want to stop people enjoying the water. Actually, quite the opposite. We want to encourage more people to get out and enjoy water, but to make sure that they're doing it safely. They're making an educated decision about where they swim. If they are hiring a private pool, making sure that pool has the correct measures in place, it is a safe environment for them and their family to safely enjoy their time.
Tell us more about RLSB since 2016, Sam.
Yeah, certainly. So the organization was formed by Her Highness Sheikh Naila bin Hamad bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa, mainly out of her witnessing and seeing that there were sadly a large number of drownings taking place. And she felt that there was maybe more that could be done for us to work together across government, community, and industry to reduce that number as best we can and build a sustainable future for young people growing up in Bahrain, to create jobs, to encourage more tourism to Bahrain, but also to make sure that we don't lose anyone senselessly to drowning or drowning-related incidents. So our vision is obviously to prevent drowning-related death and injury and prosper from our waters, as you saw in the video here. And this is very much what we've been trying to achieve since 2016. Now, when the organization was first formed, the first year was actually just spent understanding what the issues are that we have here and how can we address them, and localize solutions for this type of an issue. And from this, we formed what we call the water safety strategy, which is a 10-year overarching plan of how we are going to address water safety and reduce the number of drownings as best we can. And this involves many different aspects. There are 5 main strategies that came out of the water safety strategy. The first one is to teach swimming. So to make sure that we are creating accessible opportunities for children, adults, everyone to learn swimming, because it's not just children that should learn. As you can see, 50% of adults do not know how to swim. The second one is making sure we provide safe locations. So all lifeguards in Bahrain now are trained through Royal Lifesaving Bahrain, which is fantastic, because prior to our existence, there wasn't a unified standard of lifeguard training in Bahrain. So what this means is several things. First of all, it means that all lifeguards working in Bahrain have the same level of training, which means that there is a consistent standard of safety and actions performed by our lifeguards here. It also, for lifeguards, makes it much easier for them to move between locations, or if they were to change jobs, etc., which creates a greater opportunity for them to get new opportunities in new locations. Having this unified standard actually also involves making sure that we are developing youth. So developing youth is one of our key strategies to get young people into the industry, into lifesaving. And there's a strong link worldwide of people starting as lifeguards and progressing into being paramedics, working for civil defense, police, or other service industries. And they take the core skills they've learned from lifeguarding and take a career either in lifesaving or some related field. When we're talking about providing safe locations, it's about making sure that beaches and pools are as safe as they can be. And you rightfully mentioned, Raji, that last year we, for the first time ever, had lifeguards on public beaches, which is an incredible landmark achievement from our respect. It's the first time it was ever done in Bahrain. We did it for a period of 4 months, and unfortunately, had the global situation not happened this year, we would have continued and expanded that program this year. That program actually created 20 jobs, and it also meant that our lifeguards were at Badea Beach, creating a safe swimming environment for everyone. And over that 4-month period, there's two notable figures that always stick in my mind. The lifeguards performed more than 3,000 preventative actions. Now, when people think about lifeguarding, they often think about people dramatically running into the water, performing a rescue, saving a life. But actually, real life lifeguarding is spent a lot more in preventing accidents in the first place and educating the public, because those are our strongest tools to prevent anyone from getting into trouble. So that might mean taking a child back to their parents. It might mean making sure that the beach environment is safe, warning people of dangers when they see them. And this actually meant that in the 4-month period that we were providing the service, we performed 106 rescues, but that would have been considerably higher had we not made the interventions early to prevent those accidents. So in a 4-month period, 106 lives were saved by lifeguards, not just at Badea Beach, but actually at multiple locations, at the Ironman events, the triathlons, and several other beach locations across Bahrain as well. So we're very proud of that. And we hope that in the new year, or when we can, we will be back out on our beaches and be expanding that program to more locations. Our final strategy is to improve boating safety. So boating is a huge pastime here in Bahrain, whether that's jet skiing, whether that is going fishing on a boat, or just going out sailing. And we look at ways that we can make that safer and ensure that people are not getting into trouble out at sea. The danger of being out at sea on a boat, if you are unable to swim, is obviously considerable. And most people, when they end up in the water from a boat, don't intend to end up in the water. And that's accidentally falling into water that poses a risk to them.
Is swimming safety needed only during summer?
No, definitely not, actually.
Because I think people tend to relate it more because we choose to go swimming during summer, right? But I think that's not the case. Even especially in private pools, we tend to swim during the other seasons as well.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, in the summer, historically, is when we do see a peak in drowning incidents. And this is obviously natural and it's worldwide, because the warmer the weather is, the more likely people are to go out and visit beaches, pools, and other waterways to enjoy the water. But actually, water safety is essential all year round. There's many misconceptions about the fact that people will only drown in a swimming pool or in the beach. But in actual fact, many drownings occur in other home locations, and that can happen at any time. So, for instance, the bathtub. Sadly, we had an incident a few years ago of a young child drowning in a fish tank. These incidents can happen, and it's always essential to be alert and aware of the dangers and making sure that we're taking precautions so that we don't get into trouble. So no, it's not only a summer issue, it's an all year round, sadly, issue that we need to address.
So how important is watching over children while swimming?
It's actually one of the most important things that we advocate for and we encourage people to do properly. Actually, going back to our lifeguard service last year, and when we speak and interact with lifeguards across Bahrain, one of the biggest issues that they face is parents not supervising children correctly. And there's a misconception or misunderstanding often that people perceive the lifeguard to be responsible for supervising children in the pool, when in actual fact, the lifeguard's job is to supervise the entire swimming environment. And they have the skill and the training to respond if something does go wrong. But ultimately, responsibility for supervising children belongs with the parents or the adults that are supervising those children. And again, this goes back to my point about the misconception about the safety of beaches, and because the water's calm, that children can wade into water. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is it takes as little as 20 seconds for a child to go from being absolutely fine to drowning. And the comment that the person made, actually, I forgot their name, is very, very important, actually. And it's playing into this misconception that people scream and shout and wave their arms when they're drowning. So even if you are looking at your phone or you are not paying full attention, that you would hear if they were suddenly in trouble in the water. When in actual fact, the majority of the time people make next to no noise when they are drowning. They don't wave their arms above their head. And this is because their focus is on trying to get air into their lungs and to stay at the surface. It's very unlikely that they're going to wave their arms and scream and shout for help. And we call this silent drowning. And that is very, very true. What we would advocate for is to make sure that put the phones down and that you are enjoying the water with your child and you are supervising them correctly. The correct way to supervise children, if they're under the age of 5, is having them within arm's reach of an adult at all times. So they should never be more than an arm's length away from you. And if they're under the age of 10, you should have a clear line of sight to them. So what that means is if they are at the beach and you're going to get drinks, they should come out of the water and go with you. You shouldn't be leaving them in the water unattended. You must be able to see them at all times, just in case something does happen so that you can respond quickly.
Should swimming be a part of the syllabus from primary classes onwards? Because even your water strategy survey revealed that a good lot of children don't know to swim. And do you think it's necessary that schools take up the role and bring it into a part of the syllabus?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated issue actually that has several aspects that we need to address. But 100%, we advocate that ideally swimming lessons should form part of the national curriculum, and ideally an ideal fit is into the PE curriculum. So as you saw in the video, 95% in our study that we conducted, 95% of children do not learn to swim in primary school. And this contributes heavily to the reason why 47% across Bahrain cannot swim. Now, there are many children that do learn to swim outside of their primary school, but it should form, we believe, a compulsory part of the curriculum. Now, in terms of the barriers preventing this, is firstly the access to pools. Or to swimming environments to learn swimming. Now, the majority, if not all, of government schools here in Bahrain do not have swimming pools on site at the location. And I'll touch on this more later, but we are looking at an innovative solution to utilize our beaches to be able to actually teach children to swim. And we're not necessarily talking about them being able to compete in a future Olympics, or being the greatest swimmer in the country, but what we are talking about them learning is the very basic survival skills to keep themselves safe around water. This is things such as able to swim 25 meters in some length, being able to float, and being able to tread water for 1 minute, and know how to rescue someone or assist someone who is drowning. And we actually have a program called Swim for Safety, which is a 12-lesson program, 12 hours of learning that takes someone from being a complete novice, no idea how to swim, and has extremely successful results of getting them to achieve these benchmarks for swimming in just 12 lessons. So it's not a huge amount of time it takes to get to that level. And what we hope actually is that inspires children to want to learn more and to become more involved with swimming and progress and improve their strokes in swimming.
Olha a força que faz para tirar o menino.
Can you tell us a little bit about the video?
Yes, certainly. So this firstly isn't an incident that occurred here in Bahrain. This was an incident that happened in Rio a couple of days ago. Now, as you can see in the video, there are 2 young boys. They're just 3 years old, and they are reaching out into the pool to try and grab a toy that is floating in the water, which is very, very common. And it's one of the leading causes of children falling into water accidentally. They're not usually trying to play around the water. They're trying to grab something that's inside the pool to get it out, and they fall in accidentally. So the first thing that we picked up on this, and the first questions that we asked when we saw this was, one, where is the adult supervising these children, first of all, and they've been able to gain access to water. So having a barrier, having a fence around the pool is also very important. Now, as you can see here, the quick thinking friend actually grabs hold of his friend and manages to pull him to safety, which is incredible that he had that foresight at such a young age. And thankfully that both children were absolutely fine following the incident. So what we wanted to do is to highlight how quickly this can happen, how easily it can happen, and to draw attention to the safety measures that we can put in place to prevent that from happening to someone here in Bahrain.
What is or what are the things that one should bear in mind when you try to rescue a person?
So instinctively, as you can imagine, I'm sure most people, if they are listening, would say the same. When they see someone drowning or struggling in the water, the impulse is to immediately jump in to try and grab hold of them and help them. In actual fact, the majority of the time, that's the worst thing that you can do, because as soon as you enter that water, you are now in immediate danger as well. And typically what happens is as you approach the person, they will grab hold of you because they are trying to get air, and you can both unfortunately end up in a very serious and dangerous position under the water. So the first thing to consider if you notice someone drowning is your own personal safety. So looking around, is it safe for you to enter the water? Are you able to swim? Are you a strong enough swimmer to be able to get into the water? But what we actually advocate for is for you to reach or throw, do not go. Now, if people go onto our social media, we have lots of videos up of using what we call improvised rescue aids. So we don't expect that members of the public are going to be walking with a rescue tube like a lifeguard does, but actually most of the time there will be something around you that could help the person stay afloat, something like a ball or an empty water bottle, even a ball the size of a tennis ball would be sufficient to help someone to stay afloat even temporarily, or looking for something that you might be able to reach out and grab them and pull them to the side with. So that could be something like a broom. You can even use a bucket to assist you. And as I say, there are lots of videos on our social media, a rope as well, that will show you how to use these items to perform a rescue. So we advocate for reach or throw, do not go. If you do need to enter the water, it's important to take something with you that does float. So if there is something around you that you could use, so you don't have to get so close to the person, but you could get close to them and reach out and give them something that floats and tell them to calm down, because the panicking is often what's going to make them exhausted, which could make the situation worse. We want them to stay as calm as they can, and make sure that we call for help. If there are lifeguards around, alert the lifeguards. So it's far safer and better for you to alert the highly trained, highly skilled lifeguards to an incident and allow them to use their skills and their training to perform a rescue in those incidents.
Is there any plan for the RLSB to introduce a similar scheme which we saw in Budaya Beach in Al Jazeera as well, or any other public beach for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, ideally in the future, we would like to see our lifeguards on every beach across Bahrain, no matter how big or how small. It's important to make sure if people are using it, that it's as safe as it can be. Having lifeguards is one aspect of making beaches safer. So performing coastal risk assessments, which is another activity that we do, where we actually assess each particular environment to decide how many lifeguards are required, what equipment would be useful at these environments, and making sure that signage meets international standards is also important. So having lifeguards is one aspect. We were very excited and hopeful this year to expand our life-saving operation to more locations. We are providing it at a few locations, private beaches this year, but we would advocate and hope that in the future, every public beach in Bahrain will have a service provided by Royal Lifesaving Bahrain. There's several benefits to having lifeguard services, as well as the safety aspect. It encourages tourism when we have, bless you, it encourages tourism when we have safe beaches to encourage international tourists to come and visit Bahrain. It also improves the environment and makes sure that it is safe and clean, because having a presence of people on the beach to help control and make sure that the beach environment is kept as safe and clean as it possibly can be also encourages investment in these areas. So when you have people coming to a beach, and more people will come if they feel safer, then this encourages secondary income streams to come from people investing in the environment, businesses starting in the local area, which is obviously great for Bahrain, and also creates more jobs for people here.
Post-COVID, what are the future plans of RLSB?
So as you saw in the video, you mentioned, Raji, that you saw some children performing CPR on mannequins. So one of the big projects we conducted in the last year was to actually go into government schools and train children. And we did this in partnership with the Ministry of Education as an education awareness program, but also as a research project to understand the base level of knowledge. So we assessed the children prior to attending the workshop. They then attended a 90-minute workshop and then were tested again. And this was on basic skills like knowing which number to call for an ambulance, knowing how to perform CPR, how to check if someone is breathing, and what to do if someone is choking. And we will very soon be publishing the findings of this, but in the coming months of the new academic year, we will be expanding that program to more locations and to more schools. That program was run entirely for free for government schools, which was fantastic. And we were very pleased to train more than 5,000 children last year. In the coming months, we will be announcing a very exciting project, again with the Ministry of Education, but this one relating to swimming. And I touched on it before about our opportunity to utilize our beaches and make a safe swimming environment for children to learn to swim with our 12-stage program. So we're very hopeful that we can progress that and run some pilot programs in the coming months once schools resume and everything returns a bit more to normal. And as I say, we have just recently started in the last week, we've resumed training for our lifeguards and first aid courses with new measures in place because of COVID, but making sure that lifeguards are kept up to date. And there are several changes to the way that lifeguards behave now. And this is based on the measures that we've put in place to protect them as well. So it's really important that we're out educating lifeguards about how to keep themselves safe and members of the public during the current situation.
Well, how practical did the Royal Life Saving Bahrain find their projects when you took it online? Because a number of them have gone online, right? You've been announcing about online courses. How practical have they been?
Good, actually. So we actually came together as a team when COVID started, and we thought, how can we continue to support during this time when we are unable to do face-to-face training or behave in the way that we normally would in terms of the services we offer. So we decided to try and innovate. So we put together some workshops for children, and we sent out instructions on how to make a homemade CPR mannequin using a water bottle and an old t-shirt and some towels, and have some fun with this. And it's actually gone incredibly well, probably better than we had anticipated. We've had more than 1,500 children join our online workshops for free from 10 countries across the world. So not just here in Bahrain, we've had people join us from all over the world to take part. And it's actually gone very, very well. And we've had some excellent feedback. So although it was took a bit of getting used to, we're used to having a crowd or a room full of people. To be doing it through a screen is slightly different, but actually their ability to learn these skills were not affected. And we did lots of fun, innovative games with them through the use of virtual learning, and actually very well received. I think young people are very good with technology. It took me a while to work out what to do, but I quickly caught up with them, and it's been going well. We've also been now delivering certificated courses. So in the last week, we just ran a course for the American School of Bahrain, where we actually delivered training packs to teachers in quarantine, in the 10-day quarantine, and they joined us online and actually took a certificated first aid course over several days, joining us again virtually. So I think this time has pushed everyone, not just Royal Life Saving Bahrain, to think outside the box and to innovate. And I think the benefit of having technology and being able to adapt quickly has served us well. So we hope to get some back to some level of normality. Certain things we can't do from a computer, such as lifeguard beaches. But as soon as we can, we are ready, and we've been working on many projects in the background so that once we can resume slightly more normal activities, we have lots of things which we're excited to be launching. One of those being our Junior Beach Life-Saving Club. And this is a program where children will come and join us for a term, or hopefully ongoing, from the age of 8 up to 16, and they'll work their way through a number of different awards at the beach each week. So this is encouraging young people to get involved, come down to the beach, work alongside lifeguards, learn from lifeguards, and learn how to keep themselves and their families safe and have fun. Actually, most importantly, we want them to enjoy this program. So we're very excited to launch that. It would have launched in April this year, but once we can and everything's back to normal, we will be launching that program.
In the pools, what are the observations which Royal Life Saving made in terms of Bahrain and the pools and the culture here? You know the people, the habits here. So people are all adjusting to this new norm. So what are your observations in terms when we are opening up the public pools?
So firstly, the government of Bahrain has done a fantastic job in terms of providing guidance, not just for swimming pools, but actually for all industries on how to mitigate and reduce the risk of the spread of COVID. And I believe Bahrain as a whole has done a fantastic job in this current crisis worldwide. Now, as pools begin to reopen and as a drowning prevention organization, what we felt was that it was important that we support the industry in particular and swimmers when we get to a point where we are starting to reopen, to know how to do that as safely as possible. Now, we have created a document which are the recommendations for the safe reopening of swimming pools, which I have a copy of it here. This is made freely available for anyone who is a pool operator. And what we have done here is we have tried, as you mentioned, to complement what the government has recommended or requires legally for you to do to be able to reopen pools safely, by giving practical advice about how to apply different measures to actually meet the requirements. So we've created health declaration forms, we've given advice about the chemicals in the water, etc. So there's lots of information in there, and as I said, it's entirely free, so people can get a copy of that from us by emailing us at info@rlsbahrain.org. Now, in terms of our main recommendations, and when people are returning to the pool, I think the first thing it's important for people to understand is it's not going to look how it did pre-COVID right now. And I think that people need to be prepared for new measures being in place, and that they're not going to be able to necessarily do everything that they were doing in a pool prior to this situation. Most of the pools now are inserting lane ropes to segregate certain areas of the pool to help with social distancing. Your group needs to be less than 5 people when you're entering the pool. You must abide by the social distancing, etc. So all of the measures that have been put in place. From our perspective, it's really important that people do whatever they can to assist in this current situation. So first of all, when you are going swimming, it's a good idea to call in advance to see if there is a pre-booking system for the pool that you're visiting. And if there is, make sure you book a slot that's appropriate. When you arrive, always make sure you have showered thoroughly before you leave to go swimming, and arrive ready to swim. So wearing your swimming costume underneath your clothes so that you can just remove your outer layers and then get into the pool is really important. Most of the facilities will not have changing facilities open for you. And obviously the less contact time you can spend in these environments, the better. So if you come ready to swim, and then when you're finished, you get yourself dry, dressed, and then you shower yourself when you get home. Key thing for us is supporting the staff in the swimming pools. They're human, and they are doing everything they can to mitigate risks and to support you and themselves and everyone else in keeping safe. And they are instructed to enforce certain measures like social distancing, etc. So it's really important to support them and listen and make sure you're following the directions that you're given when you go swimming. Every environment is different. The recommendations we've put in place have to be applied in a different way to every different swimming pool based on the size, the layouts, the facilities that they have, the number of staff they have. So it's really important to get familiar with where you are going to go swimming and make sure you understand what their requirements are for you to be able to swim safely there.
And I think we also need to follow certain norms in private pools, at homes, residences, right, Sam?
Yeah, definitely. As I say, any water environment poses a risk, whether that is from COVID or just a general safety risk. And it's important that everyone takes on the responsibility of water safety. It's not government's responsibility. It's not just the industry's responsibility. It's all of ours. Every citizen here has a responsibility to make sure that they are taking precautions to keep themselves safe in and around water. Interestingly, one of the things that have happened, coming out of COVID, is we've seen a huge increase in the amount of people purchasing paddling pools and small pools that they can put up in their garden or at home, with obviously pools being closed. And as you mentioned, Raji, everyone is keen to get back to swimming to cool off in this warm time of year. That poses its own risks, and we spoke previously about the dangers that this creates, because if you're not swimming in a public environment, there are no lifeguards, there are no other members of staff. It's entirely your responsibility to make sure it's safe. So draining those pools is very important if you can't stop children accessing them. We have seen incidents where everyone has been in the garden playing in these types of pools. Then everyone goes into the house when they finished, and then a child accidentally goes back outside and falls into that water. And there's another misconception that because these pools are relatively shallow, that means they are safe. And that's not the case. It takes as little as 5 centimeters of water for someone to drown. So it doesn't need to be a vast, deep swimming pool where someone can't touch the floor for them to get into trouble. If they slip, they bang their head, they injure themselves, drowning can happen in a very small volume of water. And that's even buckets, toilets, fish tanks, as we mentioned earlier. Anywhere there is water, there is a slight risk that we need to manage. And that's, as I say, everyone's responsibility.
One is the 2017 survey, right? That survey was done in 2017. So 3 years down, 18, 19, 20, yeah. After 3 years, are you planning to do that again or to assess or check again on the stats?
Yes, definitely. At some point, we will conduct another survey, another benchmarking study to see and measure how successful the programs and activities we've been doing and has the situation changed. We hope it has. We're confident that it has with the different things that we've been doing, but it's really important. Everything that we do is based in research, and it's important to have a clear benchmark that we can compare against and measure the success of the programs that we're doing. So yes, we will conduct a similar survey in the future to ask more questions, actually, to understand more, but also to understand if there's been an improvement, which we hope there has been.
Question: what are the challenges that the Royal Life Saving Bahrain faced or faces? I'm sure you're still facing as you are getting closer or going forward towards your vision and mission. What are the challenges? And also, will you tell me, like, is there any other agency in the GCC similar to the Royal Life Saving Bahrain, or whom have you modeled this upon?
So if I answer that first, so we are the first and only internationally recognized body doing the work that we're doing like this. So the International Life Saving Federation recognizes Royal Life Saving Bahrain as the international body for Bahrain in terms of water safety, and we're the first to do that in the region. What we hope is long term that this model that we're working with here in Bahrain would expand to the rest of the region to do a similar activity and to manage water safety in the same way. The UAE does several different things and they have a robust system in place, but not done in exactly the same way that we do it. Now, we were very fortunate when we started the organization, and up to now, that we work with partners in Australia, Life Saving Victoria. And they're very well established. They've been around for a very long time, and they gave us some clear guidance, and they've supported us throughout this whole process. So we model ourselves on the successes they've had there, where it's very much ingrained in the culture of going to the beach, learning to swim, being safe. You can't build a swimming pool in Australia unless you have a barrier around the outside of it to prevent children getting access. So there's many things that we can learn, not just from Australia actually, but from the world. And it's about applying international best practice in a practical sense here on the ground in Bahrain, which is what we're trying to do. In terms of challenges that we face, COVID has presented a significant challenge, like it has to everyone. In general, making sure that we are partnering with the right people and we are making steady progress. And there's many aspects to everything. Learning to swim is not just a matter of start teaching swimming. There's many aspects, and it requires many partnerships to coordinate and make these programs work. I try not to think of them as challenges. We talk about them as opportunities for us here. So how can we work with different agencies across Bahrain to make things better for everyone, really, especially the community and the people of Bahrain?
So do we foresee partnerships from the region with the RLSB? Any such plans in the pipeline? At least in the GCC, within the GCC.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we would love to, and much as we have learned much from our partnership with LSV, we would be more than happy, and we are more than happy to share our experience and the process that we have followed with any country across the world, not just the region, who finds themselves in a similar situation.
I said the region or the GCC because of the similar geography and the similar situations that they share, so the expertise and the experience would be more relevant. So are you trying to in those angles with any of the GCC or anything have you done in the past? Any such networking?
Yes, certainly. So we've done some work in Saudi Arabia, actually, obviously being very close to us here. We supported and we've met with the Swimming Association from there a couple of times to discuss how we can possibly collaborate in the future. We hope that we can work with the whole region of GCC and UAE, obviously, to make sure that we have a unified standard as a region, actually, because that creates many opportunities in several different areas if we can create those partnerships. So we hope at some point we will get to that point. At the moment, our focus really is on improving and proving that things can work here and making sure that we have everything in place so that we can then go to other parts of the region with a complete solution about how we can address water safety wider than Bahrain and actually for the whole region of the world.
The GDN. Sam, what would be your concluding remarks?
To encourage everyone really to get out and enjoy water. It's never too late to learn to swim. If you have a fear of swimming or you're not confident in the water, we have several programs that can teach you to swim, and we can address that and we can help you to get in the water and enjoy it. So my final request would be that everyone who is watching this follow us on social media, get in touch with us to better understand the different opportunities and programs that we have and how you can be involved in the movement that we're doing here in Bahrain.